thank you both for your offer to serve our country. So let me start with you, Dr. Sewell. So modern-day slavery is real. I mean, and I think it's shocking to many people that, slavery, sometimes people think about it as a relic of the past, when in fact there is still going on in the world. One of the powerful tools that we have is the Trafficking in Persons Report. Last year we elevated two pretty powerful countries, China and Russia, to Tier 3 for their failure to make efforts to combat human trafficking and modern-day slavery. The debate, of course, is that they get waivers from the sanctions that are supposed to come associated with that, and there's a debate about that, and we can continue to have the debate about whether those waivers are wise or not. But I wonder if you could take a moment just to speak about the power of the shaming that comes with that designation and the impact that it has on countries that are designated in that way. Does it still matter to people? Does it still matter to countries, even if they may not show it publicly? Does it still matter to them when they're shamed in this way as countries that continue to be havens for trafficking and ultimately for modern-day slavery?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I agree with you completely about the importance of this issue. It is shocking, and it's a global phenomenon, and we are not immune from it here in this great country. My understanding from the briefings that I've had to date is that the shaming, in fact, matters very much. And I think we wouldn't have the keen interest that we do have in the annual list and in the movement of countries among those lists if it didn't matter. So I'd like to thank you and the members of Congress who have created this tool, because I think it is powerful, and if I'm confirmed as Undersecretary, I will look forward to leveraging it as best I can to address this global crime.
Another issue that I think we should be concerned about, and I know we are in our human rights agenda, is the issue of religious freedom. Religious persecution is on the rise in many parts of the world, and one of the offices at the International Religious Freedom Office that produces every year a similar concept to that of the Trafficking in Persons Report. It's the designation of countries of particular concern. So this administration issued these designations only once in its first term. That was back in October of 2011. Would you be supportive of an effort to make that designation an annual occurrence, as we do with other issues, given that I would imagine that the shaming effect of that would be similar to that of trafficking in persons?
I think that one of the more interesting opportunities I'm going to have in coming new to this role is looking at all of the different ways in which we do reporting on different forms of rights abuse, and trying to think about how to leverage each as best we can. My understanding is that the reviews are done annually, and my general view, sir, about how we do these reviews is to look at the facts and make the recommendation based on the facts. And so I can't speak to decisions that have been made in the past. I can give you my commitment that I will undertake to use all of the tools that we have.
Just the reviews are, but the designations are not. And let me tell you why that's relevant. The other part of it, of course, is that the sanctions that correspond to the designation expire after 2 years. So would you be supportive of the idea that the sanctions actually remain in place for countries of particular concern for as long as the designation is in place? I mean, what's the wisdom in allowing them to expire if they haven't taken any steps to be removed from that list?
I think it's a good question, and I'll have to look into it. I certainly share your desires to make the sanctions as effective as possible in support of the goals and the intent, and so I'll take a close look at that if I am confirmed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Singh, welcome, and congratulations or condolences, whichever is appropriate for depending on how you view it, but thank you for your offer to serve our country as well. You have an interesting task ahead of you. If confirmed, I believe, as I hope you do, and I have no reason to think you do not, that the American example is one of the most powerful contributions that our nation has made to the world. I know for a fact that people look at what happens in this country as a source of inspiration when they pursue their own freedoms, their own liberties, and their own expectations of what's possible. I mean, so many people in the world have been told their whole lives that people like you cannot rise because you don't come from the right family or the right religion or the right sector of society. They look to America as an example of why that isn't true. One of the challenges that I have found is that because we have such a vibrant political system, our debates and the chaos that sometimes ensues around them, people look at that as a sign of weakness. Let me give you an example. Yesterday I filed, along with many of my colleagues, a brief before the Supreme Court, an amicus brief on the issue of legislative prayer. So as I arrived at the courthouse steps, basically every viewpoint in America on that issue is represented outside, people holding signs. You know, there were the atheists were there. There were obviously those who believed strongly in prayer, others who just had constitutional reasons for being there. Viewing that scene alone, you would say, boy, this is a chaotic country. How do these people share? They're so divided. But in fact, in many ways, that's a source of our strength, because whatever the court rules on that issue, people may disagree. They may disagree very strongly, but at the end of the day, people are going to abide by it. Again, another example of that, which I lived firsthand, was the recount in Florida in 2000, which was obviously a very close election, and to this day, we still have debates about how that should have turned out. But at the end of the day, there was no question that no matter what the court ruled or decided, that's what was going to happen. How do we now go to the world and say, or what are some ideas about how we go to the world and say, when you see these things happening in our society, when you see these arguments and these debates and all these things going on, it's actually a source of strength, not a source of weakness, that we are able to have a society of such divergent views. But at the end of the day, whatever the outcome may be, people may keep fighting to change them. But there's no question that they will abide by it. No one, you know, President Clinton wasn't going to roll out the troops and cancel the election, right, in 2000 when Vice President Gore lost. These things are sources of strength for our country. How do we make that argument to a world that's kind of trying to figure out how they desperately want security and order, but sometimes in a truly democratic process, you have to have the space for the chaos that comes with debate, so long as that commitment to the rule of law is there. Is that a key component of our public diplomacy abroad, is to explain to people how the American concept works here in an effort to inspire them to pursue a similar space in their own country?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I share your passion for the debate and the breadth of that debate in America. Open societies encourage debate. And one of the things that I've been proudest of in my career as a journalist is to show the breadth of that debate. And if confirmed in this job, I would like to be able to show people around the world that it's a strength of America that we have this diversity of opinion, that we can tolerate it. I think one of the things that is appealing to people around the world and why we are a beacon is that that debate is an example of free expression, and not only tolerance for the views that we like, but tolerance for the views that we don't like. And that is part of the golden thread that is woven through the Constitution and American life. And I think it is appealing on its own to people around the world. And if confirmed, I will work on even better ways to promote that.
Can I just take 10 seconds? I have one more question, which you alluded to in your opening statement. The other thing that I think has been good for this country, it's shocking to me as you travel abroad and meet with people. It shouldn't be shocking. I shouldn't say it's shocking. It's made an impression on me how many people who, because they've gone to school in the United States, when they return home, have a much clearer understanding of what's really, what this country is really like, and what our freedoms entail, because they went to school here, they studied here, they lived here for any period of time. And I think you alluded to the fact that that is the kinds of things that we should be encouraging more of in the future, the opportunity for people to come here from abroad, not just to acquire the skills that will allow them to go back to their country. Obviously, there's some very talented people we'd like to see stay here, hence our efforts on immigration reform. But beyond that, there are folks that are going to return to their home country and help build. So in that way, it's a contribution. But beyond that, the notion that they can return home and be deeply influenced by the American idea. These young people return home, highly skilled, highly educated. Now they become potentially the future leaders of those societies. What is the role that plays, and what can we do from a public policy perspective to encourage more of that to the extent it's cost-effective and feasible?
Thank you, Senator. Our higher educational system and the educational exchanges, which Education and Cultural Affairs sponsors, is something that is vital and powerful, and its effect is incalculable. I mean, if you look at not just the 700,000 students who are here, but if you look through the history of the Fulbright scholarships, the number of Nobel laureates, the number of, for example, just in the recent elections in Pakistan, in those national elections, 27 local and national leaders elected in those elections had been here as students. I agree with you. I think that makes them more sympathetic to the American point of view, that makes them understand us better. I was overjoyed to see this story several months ago when Xi Jinping, the new president of China, came over to see President Obama in California, and he asked to stop at a little town in Iowa where he'd been visited as a leader on one of the leader exchange programs to have dinner with that family in Iowa that he'd been a young man with many years before. I think the value of that is extraordinary. And again, I'm a big believer in educational diplomacy, and I will try to increase the number of exchanges because I think that the long-term benefit of that is something that we all want.